Hey, welcome to Breaking the Silence. And boy, is my mic loud. Let me just adjust that on the mixer here. So things look a little different somehow. I don't know. Using them further back, whatever. Tonight we have Simon Bown, and Simon's not here yet. So I know he's clear on what's going on. So I'm not too concerned. He'll probably show up um, pretty soon here. I hope. So, okay. So I read his book, which is what this show is about. And I had this reaction and I wrote it down. This is amazing. Reading Simon's new book immersed me in experiences of others with near death experiences. And somehow I disassociated from my physical being, and their experiences became my own. This happened while I was reading it. It's as though I didn't remember looking at the text on my computer, but I was rather there with them in their experience. I asked myself, how could this be? I never had a near death experience, but I was brought into the realm once in my life by someone I loved who had just died. And I was. It was one of the shows. I talked about Judy. And in this experience, I connected with this very real experience. When I started reading this book, the second case in the book was the one that really did it for me. It's Deborah King's experience was it. That's the second story in the book, and she described perfectly the web and the colors and the vibration of music, exactly the way I knew it with my experience back in the 70s when Judy suddenly died. Um, I knew she was there because I had been there. There was no other possible way. I don't believe in coincidence. It took me by surprise. I got up from my computer to take a break, and that's when I noticed how different I felt. My consciousness was altered, and it still is as I write this. It was that feeling I have had before and after a visitor experience. We are all connected, and the reason this memory is mostly erased from our lives on Earth is so we can experience these journeys as humans to learn lessons for our souls and that collective web. So, um, going back to here. So, what I get from that is, especially in light of the telepathy tapes and the visitor experience, is that this is so much more than we ever imagined. This is all about consciousness, and as I've said recently, the brain is the receiver, and it's not the origin of consciousness. So at this point, I would say let's bring on Simon, but Simon's not here. So obviously something happened. I'm going to check my email. We've had on the show twice before, and he's very reliable. So something very important must have come up, and he didn't make it. And Mary just got through saying this would be a first, and it definitely is. So this show is probably going to end sooner rather than later. We'll spend some time here for a while. I'm going to talk more about this stuff. Uh, Definitely get his book. I'm assuming it's going to be available. We would know if he was on the show. I don't know if it's available on Amazon or not yet, but you've got the thumbnail, you know the title, you know the man's name. This book is really powerful. And when I hear these people telling their stories of near death experiences and the things they talk about in it, and then I hear the telepathy tapes and I hear what these kids are talking about and what they know, the fact that our consciousness is everything, that we only come onto earth in these lives to add information to the conscious collective that we are all part of. And this is the same thing that the visitors have been sharing with myself, with Whitley Strieber, and many, many other people. And I know a lot of people are really digging in their heels about this for some reason that I don't understand. but we are so clearly not these physical bodies. We're just not. I mean, how many times do we have to say this? And I think his book makes it real clear. So the Telepathy takes, and so does Whitley's latest book. Now, if you're thinking this stuff's going to be in the next movie you're going to see from me next weekend, no, that is that's a film. You know, that I wanted to do a scary, boo, creepy film with a really neat twist at the end for a long time, and I've been doing so much CG and stretching my wings with that for this whole series we've been doing. I wanted to just do a pure film. So, Lynn, thank you so much. The bell. I don't know what happened to Simon. I'm really sorry. We did everything right. He's got the right link and all those things. And so obviously something happened. Somebody went in the hospital. He it's something work related they had to deal with. I don't know. I do know it's midnight there in the UK. So who knows? But I'm never going to hold it against him because things go wrong sometimes. Oh, Rachel, I see you worked with nonverbal autistic children all my life, and I gave up on communicating with them. I was a speech therapist. This fascinates me. You should have never given up because they're there. In many cases, they're talking and communicating to each other. They are fully mentally functional in a very powerful way. And when they're taught how to spell, they can then communicate with us. And if their mother's in the room or someone related to them, but predominantly it seems it's been the mother, they will 100% of the time know everything she's looking at, even if she's in another room and they can't even see her, whether it be a book or a card or a photograph or a drawing. They will get it not just once in a while, they get it every single time. And they've done test after test scientifically using scientific methodology to prove that these kids actually are telepathic. And you know what that means? It means if they're telepathic, so are we. And you probably wonder, why aren't we then? That's because a bunch of nasty people who are trying to dominate the world started long ago telling us that we didn't and couldn't. And if we did, then we got burned at the stake or something else. So, and today, if you tell them, hey, I can read your mind, they're going to grab you, throw you in a van and take you off into some mountain somewhere and make you work for them. Nice people, huh? Our government, they're great. Just got to love it. I might have had the slightest little vestige of respect for them at one time, but that's completely gone. We are on our own. And I would highly recommend that if you do develop or have such abilities, you don't share it on social media. You don't share it with anybody but people who are close to you, and you better make sure you can trust them too, because it's dangerous. And I really worry about these kids. So, asked a good question. Can we get an answer, please? To what? What did Ann say? Mary, you're not putting them up on the screen. I think Mary's a little upset that our guest didn't show up. It's a first for us. Okay. So anyway, if you're working with autistic children that can't speak, you're going to find that most of your colleagues and materialists, as we call them, scientists, are going to tell you, give up on them. They're vegetables. They can't talk. They can't think. They can't do anything. All you can do is feed them and keep them alive. And that is so wrong. And that is so typical. I mean, that's what Neil Tyson would probably tell you. You think he would even look at the mountains of evidence regarding this subject that have been done scientifically the way he would demand it, he still would reject it. I'm sure he would, because he's done the same thing with the UFO phenomenon. We have just as much evidence and we have just as much hard science on it, but it's rejected. So very frustrating. Like I said, listen to the tapes, the telepathy tapes, and then come back and tell me that there's not something to it. I dare you, because you won't be able to. You can't possibly do that, not unless you are a materialist and you accept that the brain is who you are. It's just a receiver for your consciousness. That's all it is. Steve, how much of reality do you think we can comprehend as long as we are incarnated human beings with our brains and our bodies? I think we can comprehend a lot. And if you realize that we are consciousness first and physical second, we are always connected to that knowledge, and we always have been. I'm going to go back to Betty and Drazen. You guys know about her books? One of the things that really caught me when reading her book, they're wonderful, and her illustrations and everything. It was great. But one of the things that really caught me was the visitors telling her that we were once a certain way, but then we separated. We separated. And I think I think it's really clear that what this separation is. You know, I look back and I look back and I look back and I see the Neanderthals and I see Australopithecus and I see Peking Man, all of them. And I think to myself, especially Neanderthal, because they couldn't really have speech. I bet you they were highly telepathic, and it was quite natural to them. And they didn't even think anything about it. I know that these children, in a lot of cases, in the telepathy tapes, didn't even realize at first they had bodies. It was conceptually odd to them and strange to them that they had these bodies, and I had fingers, and I've got, which shows you how much into their consciousness rather than their physicalness that they were into, that was their real level of being, was pure consciousness that didn't know it couldn't talk to other children that had the same condition they had, because they do talk to each other. They go to a place called the Hill, and these telepathic children communicate with each other, and that's been proven pretty much within a shadow of a doubt as well. And a lot of people are turning their nose up at it, but then when they take a second look at it, they admit, as I heard today in one of the tapes that Mary's listening to while we were here at the studio waiting to start the show, that he was very skeptical, especially when they talked about the spiritual aspect of it. The fact that they saw their ancestors and people that were dead and other beings. But he was a good man, and he looked at the data and went, my God, there's actually something to this. This is real. And that changes everything, because, our species, our culture is you're born and you die. And between that period of time that you've been born and you die, you need to get it all, get it in and do it, because when you're dead, and that's it. Which makes people very greedy and very possessive and violent overall. Imagine they realized they never die. They've never been born, and they never will die, that their consciousness exists eternally. Because when you're just consciousness, time and space are irrelevant. They really don't exist. Everything is a projection of consciousness. So this is what I've been getting out of my visitor experience. No, did I get that initially? No, I didn't. When I first became aware that these things were happening to me. I didn't see it as a threat. I saw it as fascinating and spooky. The land of the others overlaps the visitors, the dead, and other phenomena. Well, absolutely, Dennis. It's as Susan Alloway says, or the being said to her, we are all the same. I don't know anything about Danny, and this is new to me. I'm sorry. I wish I could answer that question and tell you what I think, but it's obviously something I need to look into. I'm curious about everything. There are certain people I really, really in this community that I find questionable, but I will still watch them, and I still plan to watch some of them. I haven't yet because I want to know what they're really all about. I don't want to go by the hearsay of other people. That can be even people that are really close to you will say, "Oh, don't deal with them. They're really Well, you don't have to deal with them, but if they are public and they do interviews and videos and conferences or whatever, you still need to hear them before you can judge them. Try not to judge. Have an opinion of them. So not only speech therapists give up. Not all speech. Okay. Yes, it is. Well, the thing, Rachel, is that these people, I'm sure these telepathy tapes are getting pretty widespread and well known. And if they're not, let's spread it. Let's spread all this stuff. That's what breaking the silence is about. Let's break the darn silence. Let's get the public knowing about these things that have been repressed by the church, by the various governments, all of them, basically all over the whole world. These people think they're the most powerful thing on the planet, and you're going to do what they say, and you're going to believe what we tell you. Well, let's break that silence and just show our neighbors and our friends and our families and everybody around us if we can. You're not going to be successful with everybody, but you know, if two people or one person says, my God, I never knew that before. Like the great story I told you about the woman, the 60-year-old woman who I said, people don't even know what the nearest star is. And she says, I don't know what the nearest star is. I said, it's the sun. All her life, she never knew that. It completely changed her life right then and there. She says, my God, that means all those other stars out there are suns too. I said, you got it. So how many people do you think she told that to? And then how many people did they tell that to? And then how many people did they tell that to? And exponentially and so on. So you may only reach one or two people, but those one or two people will talk to four more, we'll talk to eight more, we'll talk to 10 to 20, and so on and so forth. So every bit of effort you make to break the silence in any way you can will help add to the knowledge that our culture needs to have before things go terribly wrong, worse than they already have. And they've gone pretty wrong lately. So anyway, I'm preaching at you. I'm sorry. I'm not a preacher, although that was a great TV series. Uh, I can't believe Simon didn't show up. That's amazing. I'm sure I'll find out, what happened. I just hope he's okay. And that, I'm checking my email now, and no, there's nothing there. I suppose I could also check. No, he wouldn't text me, so maybe no, he couldn't have got the date wrong. So I'm worried about him. I mean, he's just finished a book that is revolutionary in the way that there have been books about this subject before, but this one says that they're verified on the cover. Verified. Do I have that thumbnail here, Mary? I think I do. Let's see. That's the wrong way to do it. Put that down. There you go. Okay, let's see. I think I do. I think it's on this computer. No, not there. Okay, they keep changing things in this. There we go. And thank you for saying that. I mean, I like hanging out with you too. So let's see if we can find. It may not be in here. It's great. The cover on his book is just so nice. Now he did. You know what? I have the cover of that. I'm sure I've got right. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So there you go. That's just beautiful. Verified near-death experience, proof of the afterlife. That's pretty bold, but facts are facts. And when you have facts, and you can read a story from someone, and then you find out that after you've read the story, that they backed it up with witnesses. Like for instance, when Deborah King was dying on the table, she wasn't being operated on, but she was having. She had a problem. She had a procedure, and it went wrong. They made a mistake. They practically killed her, and they did kill her. Next thing she knew, she was against the ceiling and a little disoriented. And then she realized she's looking down at herself. Well, from there, you've heard this before. But what was so amazing is that she is able to explain and describe every single instrument in the room. Not only that, sure, she could have seen that stuff before when she was brought into the room, not what was brought in later on, the equipment that was brought in to bring her back, hopefully, to life. And there were different people in there, and she described them exactly. She described every single thing they did, and her brain was shut down. She was dead. And this has happened again and again and again and again and again. And of course, the experience that she had while this was all happening, and she saw the stars, and then she realized each one of those was a soul. First, she was in the black void. Then she saw that. There was a presence with her the whole time. And it was just extraordinary. It was everything I knew. And it felt just like a visitor experience. So anyway, you're going to put me back up to at the stage. Well, no, I'm down. I'm down in the corner.
Okay, I know.
Anyway, this is the show that didn't happen. We've been doing this for over a year, and this is what happens. So sometimes, and I know that Whitley's dying to have him on his show and review the book and all that. So you'll get a chance to see him there, I'm sure. We'll have him back. Next week we have Mark Sims. If you're not familiar with Mark Sims, you ought to look him up. He's a close friend to Whitley, myself, and Mary. And in fact, he's having an event in Ojai you can purchase tickets for. He is the co-founder and supporter, financially speaking, for Danny Sheehan's group, which I'm the New Paradigm. And they're having an event at the Ojai Playhouse, and they're going to have Danny Sheehan there, Yvonne Smith. Whitley was going to be there, but he's going to be in Phoenix, so he won't be there. I'll be there with Mary. We'll be in the audience in the back somewhere. Look for the guy with the mustache and a hoodie on. That's me. This show's about them. It's not about us. And they're showing a new film, a premiere, a documentary that was made. And I forget the name of it, and I'm sorry. But you might want to look into it. And it was sent out in the newsletter, I believe, the link. But you can always write to us. And if you can get to Ojai, if you're outside of the country and you want to fly in for that event, I don't recommend it, and your country won't either. Just stay home. But if you're in California, you should be able to get there and back okay. Anyway. Okay, so I'm looking at comments. Yeah, so we have that event. So we have Mark, and he'll talk more about that next week. I am working on, and I'm sorry, Steve, but if you're listening, I have a hard time pronouncing your name, but this wonderful person we met who lives in Florida, it was sitting on his porch one night, and he saw something come through, like he described it as a curtain. He saw this bright light come through the curtain, but as it kept coming through, he could see more and more what was coming through this dark curtain effect in the stars. And it was a big triangle. And it changed his life forever. And to hear him talk about it, it's amazing what he did. He shot the video by going into his car, I guess with a phone or some kind of handy cam, but it was really dark, and it was, like after sunset, and it kept getting darker and darker as he's talking. But he's got a wonderful voice, and he tells the story so well, and you can just tell this guy, this was really something that shook him to the core. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be our next experiencer story episode. I don't know the date that's going to run. I'm currently editing it and working on it. And mention the Zoom meeting. Oh, Zoom meeting. Yes, we're going to have a zoo. Anyway, it's a great case. It's a short piece. I know there's more he can add to it, because he sent me a bunch of drawings that were things that he was experiencing. I believe he lost. The whole event seemed like it happened very quickly, and he went and stood out underneath it. He couldn't believe nobody else saw it in town. He was really exasperated. He said the thing was just huge in the sky. I've seen one too. I know what it's like. But a lot of hours passed, and he couldn't account for it. So I think that's going to be a good episode. So I know it's going to be a good, and I'm having a great time reenacting what he experienced. So that's coming up, and we don't have many more experiencers coming forward. I think we, for now, have gone through it. Most people are afraid to come forward. I totally get it, especially in this climate we're in now, because you got, people are running around snatching people who they don't like off the streets, literally, and from schools, colleges, and everything else, throwing them vans and sending them to El Salvador or wherever it is they're sending them. And so with that kind of edginess going on, coming forward and saying that I have special abilities, and I've had contact with the visitors who the powers that be are really afraid of, I think. And they're afraid of people who have an association, with them. So it's, but hopefully some more people will come forward. Any of you listening, you're welcome to come forward. We don't cherry pick. We don't. And any way you can send us the story, whether it's on your iPhone or iPad or shot from your laptop, or you've got a video camera and you do it that way, or a friend shoots it for you, we'll accept it and we'll use it, and I'll make a show out of it, and we'll so you can break your silence. So Mary wanted me to mention the Zoom meeting we're having. Sorry for the nose again. This always happens to me on the show. I don't know what it's about. I don't know. Maybe it's the owl. Whew. Anyway, we're having a Zoom meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Reason it's that early is so that it's sort of centralized time for people in other countries and other parts of the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. And we're going to do a meditation. Pardon me. We're going to do a meditation. And we're also going to discuss our experiences and talk about all of this, just like a support group. But this is when you can all attend. And it's private. It's not being recorded. It's not on the internet. And whatever gets said and shared in this group stays in the group. And if you're a visitor and you're listening to this and you want to show up there, we welcome you. We absolutely welcome you. That would be amazing. And who knows? Maybe Whitley will be there. He has been in other ones. But I'm not telling you that. So, oh, I should go then. Whitley's one of the gang. He's just like the rest of us. Yes, he's written some amazing books and he's an amazing human being and stuff, but he's just like you and me. And he has these experiences and he's very passionate about it, just the way you are. So, um, so we never know who's going to show up. And I think you have a good time if you showed up. So, I'm sending it to you, some sketches, data for a better presentation. Oh my God, Alchemist. You must really like this show. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. You know, we even flubbed the guest or something happened. So, but don't get me wrong. Simon, I love Simon. He is a wonderful human being. He's an intelligent man. He's just, and boy, can he read stories. He's read a couple of segments from my book, but something is there, which you can get on Amazon. And he just does such a great job. I mean, as I'm listening to him read it, I'm thinking, I wrote that. It just sounds better when he reads it. So he's one of those. He's got that wonderful sound to his voice, and it's very distinguished and very British, and it's lovely. We just love him. So yes, happy Friday, Steve. Thank you, Alchemist. So so what do you want to talk about? What time is it in London? It's 12:31. No, in my last communication with him, he told me that that this was going to be 12 o'clock midnight for him, which is fine because he really loves um, that environment, that time in the evening. He thinks it's a really good time to talk about this stuff. So he was fully aware that it was at midnight. I just got an email, so let's see. It might be from him. Maybe he's having a technical difficulty. Here we go. Nope. Oh, it's from Rachel. Okay, she's saying that she did not, that I didn't read it correctly. She did not give up on him, and I'm so glad to hear that. And she did watch the telepathy tapes. Then you know, Rachel, you know well, and I'm sorry for that. Please forgive me. So, like I said, what it's 5:02 a.m. here. Wow. So where is here? Good evening from New York. Hello, New York. Mac Geek. I remember that computer you have in your avatar. My roommate had that, and I had the VIC 64 at that same time period in time. Of course, I remember the Apple II and the one you even had to put together. That's how far I go back with computers. In fact, I go back further than that. I go all the way back to the old teletypes in the internet between the mainframe in Berkeley and San Bernardino, where I was going to school. Okay, yeah, we do send a newsletter out every week that tells you what we're up to, and if you want to get that, you can email us. So, Rachel, I hope you're still here. I hope you didn't get mad at me. So, okay, you're from Illinois. Huh. And you're an X-ray tech, alchemist. Oh, I see. You're talking to someone. Yeah, well, I told the story about same right back at you, Rachel. Much, much love. We do love you. We love all of you. Um, I'm just looking through the comments, see if there's anything I missed, and I don't want to not read them fast, just read them nice and slow so I can get things right. I'm a little off my game because our guest didn't show up, and obviously something happened to him, and so an emergency of some sort. So that's what happens. In India, it's 5. Oh, in India. Oh, hello, India. Wow. Glad to have you here. So for me personally, with the experiences, I want to say, well, not much has happened lately. It's been kind of quiet. But then in listening to telepathy tapes, and I'm hearing this passage where they're talking about being able to I might be getting this wrong, Mary, but they were able to go into dreams telepathically. That was who? You might want to come on the show. You could be our guest, Mary.
Teacher got to go on the hill.
Oh, the teacher.
Because she was empathetic, but she could only do it in one dream.
Yeah, but she still did it in a dream.
Yeah.
Now, the hill is the place where all these children meet and talk to each other, and they can be miles away from each other, and they know each other, and they know each other's stories, and but because the teacher had their ear, basically, and believed them, she was able to access it through her dreams. So dreams are much, much more than again, our materialistic scientists are trying to tell us they are. Some things that they're telling us about dreams may be true, because I know all creatures dream pretty much. I wondered, does the jumping spider dream? I know my dog does, but there's been lots of stuff happening in my dreams, and it's just not idle dreaming. And they're actual realities, and I'm actually there, and I know I'm there. And so this, to me, could very well be another level to the experience, something that I've gradually graduated towards or evolved towards. The more I have my mind open to what this experience may actually be, the more they give me. Because the dreaming lately has been incredible. And I have been seeing symbols in the morning when my eyes are closed, not when I'm asleep, but when I'm awake. I'm seeing amazing things. It's interesting beings. Grays, I see them a lot that way, but I see all these symbols, and I won't say I'm getting used to it, but I'm becoming part of it. So it's not like I don't wake up and go, "Wow, that was so amazing," and oh, geez, and it's hard to get through the day because you can't shake it off your mind. But when I read his book, and I went to that chapter with Deborah King, that was an experience in itself, because somehow I was there. It was no longer I was reading this book off the screen here that I'm looking at now. I was somehow there, and I could see everything. I could feel the emotions, everything. It was just as real as can be. And when I finished it and I backed away like that, I had to go to the couch, and I put a blanket over me, and Mary kind of looked at me, and I was sitting there saying, I just can't believe what just happened. And it just really affected me. Just took my breath away, which is a real strong selling point for Simon's new book. I definitely wouldn't miss that book at all. So I wish he was here to talk about it. And he has been here twice before, and we've talked about this subject in detail, and he has worked with a lot of people. Now, most of the people that are stories are shared in his new book were people that were on his podcast, because he does a podcast about this subject. And you should really look up Simon on the net. His podcast is very popular. He does a great job. And if you like this subject matter, here's the thing. If you're interested in alien abduction and UFOs and flying saucers and all that kind of stuff, you might want to listen to this stuff, because you'll have more of an understanding of what that stuff's all about than any other way, probably, at least in my opinion. Do I have intuitive feelings about symbols, Rachel? When I look at the symbols, I don't understand their meaning, but on another level, I feel like I'm connected to what they're connected to, if that makes any sense. I feel, well, maybe I do, but I need to look at them more carefully. The thing is, I'm awake. I have to get up. We get up at, alarm goes off at 5, and I got to get up. And so you see these symbols and you see these images and stuff, and then the monkey mind says, you got to get up, you got to get out, you got to do what I need to do. And since I have to get up early tomorrow too, but what I have to do is just spend a bit more time with them. And I think the other thing I need to do is, if I can, get up and draw them down, what I saw, and maybe I can get something out of them. But I feel like they're familiar. Maybe that's the way I can put it. Well, the thing is, Dennis, I mean, it's very difficult to put the things I'm seeing in my mind right now when I'm looking at those symbols and feeling into, it's difficult to make them verbal. If I could telepathically communicate with you, then I could show you those, and I could share with you my emotions, my feelings of these symbols, and we might get something more out of it than my blubbering with this limited language and this, i9 14th generation chip I have in my head. Jamie, yeah, it'll cause you to have a download. I'm real busy, and I'm really like, okay, got to get up, got to do this, that. That may be very well true too, because I'll get up, and then this thing will hit me that wow, this is important. I got to write this down, or I have to draw this. And maybe that comes as a result of those symbols. I don't know. I have to admit, I haven't really paid the kind of attention to it deserves. Well, I don't really have an opinion of him. I've watched him. And he's very intense, and he seems to really believe what he's sharing with us. And that's about as far as I get, because, with most of the whistleblowers, and I've known some of them, and they've since disappeared on us, gone underground or something. It's really weird. I just, I listen to what they have to say, and I think about it, and that's about as far as it goes. Have any of the symbols you've seen been reproduced by others? Yes. Yeah, sure. In fact, with the show I'm doing now, Steve, his symbols that he drew down and the things he saw, I'm totally familiar with them for some reason. I mean, I look at them and go, oh yeah, those. When I saw the I-beam symbols from Roswell, those look familiar too. They just did. I'm not saying that, oh, yes, I know those because I was on a ship once. And no, it's not like that at all. I just look at them and they seem familiar, almost comforting, if that makes any sense. Which symbols? God, where do we begin? I don't have any on this computer. I don't have any of those symbols that are handy. I don't think. I do not think I do. Or maybe I do. Let's see. Let me see here. Well, I'll show you some of the ones that are from the new show that I'm working on now, and let's see if I can do that. We've got 15 minutes left, so why not? Something really must have happened to. Okay, here we go. To Simon. I sure hope he's okay. So, scroll down here. These are some of the symbols that he sent me. Okay, I'm going to show them. There we go. Do any of those look familiar to you? There's more. I have more. I'm going to make some of these in CGI and clean them up and give them a little glow and stuff for the show. But of course, I can't see chat right now because I'm doing this. This one's, I mean, none of these look unfamiliar. I mean, how can that even be, right? I recently met this man, and he told us a story over the phone, and Mary and I were quite taken by it. You could just hear the honesty. You could hear they're telling me I've got too many files, so let me get rid of one so I can put that one up. Delete overlay, delete. I see there was a question down there. I'll get to that in a second. Is this it? Okay. These look really familiar. And what's interesting about them is, oh, there's Simon. My God. Yes. Let me put him on the stage. Simon, can you hear us? Let me get out of here. Let me close this down.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
How are you doing?
We're doing quite well. We were hoping you'd show up, turn up.
I think I might be late. Might I be late?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I think that you had daylight savings and your clocks moved an hour, and our clocks in England didn't move an hour. So this is yeah, I'm 10 minutes early by my clock.
That's when you would normally show up, would be 10 minutes before the actual show began. I had a lot to say about your book at the beginning, and the thing that I was talking to them about was when I was reading Deborah's King's story, a very strange thing happened to me, and when she got into the Black Void and it went from there, it's like I wasn't reading at all. I was there with her. I felt all the emotions and just it was exhilarating. It was an amazing thing. And when I finished it, I literally had to get up from the computer and go sit on the couch and put a blanket over me. I've never experienced anything like that before, but I think part of it's because when I had that experience with Judy, when she died and she came to me in my dreams and pulled me into that very same realm, she was describing the vibration, the music, and the colors and the web, and that just blew me away because I don't know this woman, and she was describing my own experience almost to the letter. Not to mention everything else that went with it. I found that really amazing, and I was sharing that with the community here, and um, saying how important this book is because um, you don't just show stories, you don't just write stories about people who've had these experiences. You also afterwards go into detail about the validation of them, right down to, I mean, it's one thing, you know, she was brought into that room, she was conscious, she could have seen the faces of the people there, she could have seen the instruments in the room, but she couldn't have possibly seen the other instruments that were brought in afterward to revive her, or the additional human beings that were in there that she hadn't met before, and could describe them exactly and everything that was happening to her when she was technically dead, brain was off. And they were very concerned about her having brain damage, in fact. So that, and it's not just, you don't just have one case or story like that in the book. You have a whole bunch, and every one of them, at the end, you back up.
Yeah, it's that's the whole point of the book, really.
Well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's also kind of spiritual in a way, and goes through the whole experience, doesn't it? It's not
It
just these
does.
events that can be verified, and
Have
it's
you had a chance to listen to the telepathy tapes yet?
no, I haven't.
You must. You simply must, because when you hear what these autistic kids, they were non-speakers, have to say about their abilities and their telepathy, this is all scientifically backed up. These people went in with real science, real methodology, and literally proved these kids are telepathic. But when you hear the things they talk about their ancestors they see, the beings, the fact that they talk to each other, that consciousness is everything to them, they're speaking about the very same things that are in your book, clearly. And it's quite moving. You know,
That's
I
really
think it was in
interesting.
your book that I read, the brain is not what you think. It's a receiver. It's not the origin of consciousness. And that really stuck with me. And it's true. I mean, how much more
Yeah,
proof does the world need?
I know. And with Deborah's case as well, when she was a nurse, there was a guy that they resuscitated, and she said to the physician there, "Let's go one more round and try and get him back."
That's right. Yes, one more round. And she described that perfectly.
And yeah, and then the guy came back. He was resuscitated and said to her, "I remember you. You were the one that said, 'Let's go one more round.'"
Right.
And then during her near-death experience, he shows up as a spirit and says, she says, "Oh, you're here?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, where else would I be?" So it's like
Yeah.
in that story,
Yeah.
there's
It's a
more
matter
than
of
just
fact,
her
isn't it?
verification.
It's a
Yeah,
matter of fact. Well, how about when her life review happened and she passed the homeless with she had leftovers from, I was leaving a restaurant, I believe, wasn't it?
yeah,
She thought about offering him the food, but then she thought about her children, and then the spirit next to her, God, whatever you want to call it, said, "This is not a judgmental thing, but we just wanted you to know about this man, that he had been in a car accident, and that um, he became addicted to painkillers and drugs, and that's what put him on the streets."
yeah. And he felt more shame or embarrassment for being in that situation than
Yeah,
feeling bad about not getting the food from her. And it's that kind of I know you call it telepathic, but it's like this incredible insight she had into that guy and his life and his background. You see that in other stories in the book as well. This guy,
So when
Jeff
is this?
Olson.
So your book is released now?
Yeah, it was out on Monday. So it's quite an exciting time.
I
And
bet.
I'm really sorry I turned up so late here this evening.
That's okay. We're here now. Who did the book cover? That book cover is fantastic.
That's somebody on Fiverr. I had about 5 or 6 attempts at all these different covers, and that was the best one. I'm really glad I chose it.
Well, yeah, and when you see it, I zoomed way in on it and got close to it. It's you have to see it close up. It's really something. I don't think we have the ability to do that unless you put the book up close to the screen, maybe. But
Hang on.
it's
I just happen to have one right here.
ah closer, bit flatter, please, Hal. I mean, Dave. Always. It still doesn't
Yeah.
do it justice. But where can they get this book?
It's on Amazon, and
Oh,
you can
good.
get it in Barnes and Noble and places, and it's on Kindle and paperback and audiobook. So I've got all those bases covered.
Wow, you've been busy, and so you did the audio yourself. I was telling them what a wonderful voice you have. What you when you read parts of my book, I said it was hard to believe that I wrote it. You made it sound so good.
Oh, wow. It almost
Well,
sounds
you
like you're
did.
saying, and I thought you were a bit of an idiot and you're got capable. But it's, you've written a book. You go back over it, and almost every word you agonize over to make sure it's the right word.
Yeah.
And you try and get it exactly right. But there's nearly 30 cases in the book, no, more than 30. And there's all sorts of verifications. And that's like I put on the book proof of an afterlife. And for me,
Right.
this is proof of an afterlife. There's so many
Absolutely.
cases like this.
Well, we've had the proof for a long time, but you've you put it in a neat, tidy little package where people can review the data that's in there, the stories, and decide for themselves, which they always seem to do. But have you got any feedback on the book? I know it only came out Monday, but I'd be curious of what the public makes of this. So,
Yeah, I've got some great feedback. There's a number of 5-star reviews now on Amazon, and I've talked to a couple of other people where I've been a guest on their podcast, and one of them, I think, is a teacher, and she teaches creative writing, and she said it was really well written. So that's nice. People have been saying to me that they were reading it and they had to stop and put it down because they were in tears, or they found it such an emotional hit, and
well, it
then
is
pick it up again
emotional.
later.
It
So
is very
it's
emotional.
almost like a collection of short stories, and you can just dig into any chapter you want. You don't have to read them through in sequence.
Yeah, but one leads to another. So I hooked you up with Whitley. Did you hear from him?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, well, I'll pound on him some more. So he was very excited to read your book.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
I told him about you and everything, and he said, "No, I want him on the show. I can't wait to have him on the show." He's because, like myself, he realizes how much a part that the subject matter you were writing about is part of the paranormal experience, the visitor experience, whatever you like to call it. It's all connected. It's all part of it. It's another. It's not another realm. It's the realm. The people
Yeah.
that pass on and come back. But of course, then there's the stories of people who have passed on and they were channeled, and you get even more insight to what it's like on the other side. And whenever I hear it, it all seems so right to me and so correct. And I don't think it's because of wishful thinking. It's more like, oh yeah, that's home, and we're here doing this now, but we can go back
Yeah.
there. And it seems very natural.
It's like one of the near-death experiences says that leaving the body behind was just like taking off a heavy overcoat. But also, there's one of the cases in the book. There's somebody when they're in that kind of spiritual realm. It's this incredible landscape, and they see all these people with all these different period clothes on across history, and then there's some individuals with them that are not even human. And she said then she realized these were all her past lives, and she felt a part of her soul in all of them. And so she was talking about lives on other planets.
Well, that makes sense. Really? And then I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Jackrabbit case that we did with Susan Alloway, but there's this moment when she's with the visitor, the gray, and she asks, "Can I touch you?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." So she touches the being, and she recoiled afterward and said, "Ooh," and the being looked at her and said, "Well, why did you do that?" And he says, "Well, you're I can't remember the exact words. If she's here, she'll correct me. Is that you were kind of ugly or creepy or something like that?" And he said to her, "Well, my dear, I am you and you are me. We are all the same." And I've heard this from many, many experiencers, people that have had um, been taken by the visitors. And it would make, again, what you're telling me really is in sync with that. We've lived many
Yeah.
lives on many worlds, as many different forms, male, female, other planets, but we are all the same because we're consciousness.
Yeah, I think there's a thing where we're too focused on Earth, like Earth is the center of the universe and it's only here that things happen. But
Yeah.
we're just some not very special planet around a not very special star and amongst billions and stars and billions of galaxies. I think it'd be quite arrogant to think that we're the only life.
Yeah, that's the nail on the head, the arrogance, the ego, it's what's corrupting the world as we speak. So, and there's so much more, and there's no reason to there's no birth, as the Buddhists say, there's no birth and there's no death.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't feel like it though, does it? When we're in this body like this and we just have this consciousness and we have these physical feelings of our fingers and everything, and
Sure.
to have that experience of being out of the body and how different that is doesn't come to many people. And there's lots of people who have near-death experiences who say you don't want that experience like this. Because I might read some of these stories and think I'd like to experience this and see what happens, but they say no, you don't want it. Maybe it's because of all the trauma that comes with it. What has to happen to your body to get into that position?
Perhaps.
Just
But there are people who have been there, like myself, without that body trauma, and it really turned me upside down. I mean, I was only 26 years old, but I already knew that we were more than our physical form at that time. I knew we were connected with the stars. I knew all that, and but not like I could do today. But that was part of contributing to how I feel today. It completely blew me away. And the funny thing about it is when I woke up from the dream, and that's how she got to me, was in the dream. Um, I was busy. I had to leave. I talked about this earlier before he showed up, and I had to go to this premiere of a movie I worked on, and it's all important to go see the movie. I did all these makeup effects for it. And it was a big deal, and then it's when I came home afterwards, and I checked my phone machine with a cassette tape in it, and found all these messages about that she had died at the very time this all happened to me. And that when suddenly a switch went off, and I knew, oh my God. And it was so emotional and so heavy, for lack of a better term. Um, it made me physically ill as well. It completely turned my life upside down, changed the whole course of it. So I think that in a lot of cases, that happens to people, and they didn't really want that, because now they don't look at life the same way. They don't look at anything the same way. They feel, they can feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, they say it's like you're wearing this really heavy, awful suit or something that's really slowing you down, and it really slows down your intellect and
It
all
does.
these kinds of things.
It does. But going back to telepathy tapes, which I'll really be curious when you start listening to them, what you think, because God, so much of what I read in the book and what I've been hearing from people who have these experiences, myself included, it's all inclusive. It is. So it's clear that the visitors, that the more advanced physical, non-physical combination of beings know and spend much of their existence in that realm overall, that level of consciousness is the real place to be. But we're here, and we're in these bodies, and we're learning, and we're contributing to the knowledge base of consciousness. And it's said that's why this is happening. But boy, is it rough. It is.
Yeah, it's that reincarnation theory, isn't it? That we come here to experience all sorts of things that could be really bad or really good, but it's your soul's learning all that stuff. And
Yeah.
this makes the soul progress. And in some way, it shares all that with all the other souls in that web
Yes.
of connection.
Mary was listening to telepathy tapes this morning, and that was all in there. Exactly what you said, word for word. The child knew this. They know it.
Yeah.
And they another curious thing too was some of these kids were really out of sync with having bodies. The body wasn't the main thing, and some of them were not even aware that they actually had bodies initially. They had to become accustomed to them, which is really something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I've heard of, so I was going to say, I've heard of mediums and channelers have communication with people who have Alzheimer's. And it's like those people have left their bodies and they're doing other things. And so it's the body's still alive, but their consciousness is doing something else. And then you get terminal lucidity, which is, in the last few days of life, suddenly they come back and start talking as normal, which is
Yeah.
a real puzzle because their brains are not capable of it anymore.
And yet our materialistic scientists keep sweeping it under the rug, only because of their egos. They can't explain it. So instead of admitting that I can't explain it, it's unexplainable, no one's going to think any less of you for doing that. In fact, I'm going to think more of you. But for some reason, they feel like their reputation will be damaged if they are this notable scientist, and I'm not mentioning names, and I can't explain this. This shouldn't be, but it is. And so instead they just say, no, that's all bunk. Under the carpet it goes. The
Yeah.
carpet must be getting pretty lumpy for them to walk over these days.
That's what I heard. They sweep the stuff under the carpet till the furniture topples over.
Yep.
I think there's a thing of what is it, ontological shock, where some people have that their paradigm, their whole worldview, what as the foundation of their life is this materialism. And if they get something that really challenges that, it's such a shock. They almost can't handle it. So they have to close it down and refuse it. And it's almost like they're putting their fingers in their ears and saying, no, I can't hear you. That old, don't bother me with the facts. My mind's already made up.
Yeah. But it's interesting to note also that as some of these people get much older, it starts to come back to them. That somewhere along the line, they agreed to do this, come into these bodies, come into this life, come into this reality and experience it. There's, it's interesting that when children are first born in the early years of life, that they have memories of their past lives, they have memories of other things, and then it fades, and then they become completely lost in this reality in being human. And then when they get older, they start to remember again. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I know that they forget stuff around age 7 is when they really start forgetting it. And some of them might track down the previous life and go to that place or find the house they used to live, or maybe even people they used to live with. And it's almost like something's resolved for them then, and they can relax and they understand, and then they go into their current life and leave all that old stuff behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember when I was little, my dreams about World War II. So,
Yeah, when my daughter was about 3 years old, we were in the kitchen and she said to me, "You know, when I was this small, you used to pick me up." But that's the only thing. No, she said, "When you were this small, I used to pick you up." That's what my 3-year-old said to me, which sounded like a past life memory. And if she used to pick me up, maybe she was my grandmother or my grandfather or something.
yeah, I know. We're sent to school. We're taught by teachers, well-meaning, um, the facts of life, in general, and we accept it for the most part. Some of us do. I was pretty bad. I was always questioning, but and so when we hear such things, it's so far outside the realm of what we know that we can't accept it. And the whole time, here we are, this consciousness inhabiting this body and this brain that's our receiver for it. And most of us aren't aware of it at all. And we will be at one day when we pass again. But, it's just, I guess if you're going to have this experience, you need to be able to have this experience, and remembering where you came from, your past, and all those things is not part of that. But then there are plenty of us that die on the operating table and have these experiences, or get picked up by visitors in a craft and have that experience, or have communications with the dead, and so on and so forth. And it's prolific, and it happens all over the world, a lot of the time. But I would say that 90% of the people that have these experiences don't want to talk about it. Will never talk about it.
I suppose part of that is because they don't want to be thought of as being weird or crazy. But another thing is it's so personal, I suppose. You wouldn't just tell anybody your real personal fears or experiences,
Yeah.
the emotions that are in there.
So, I often wonder, what do these people make of what we're learning about our universe, this one universe? Because of James Webb, the people who are paying attention to it, their minds are being blown. Literally, just, if you can, after having knowledge of what the Webb discoveries have been with that telescope, having that knowledge, if you could suggest that anything is too far-fetched or weird, would be wouldn't be right. You couldn't get any weirder than our cosmos and our universe and what's going on. You have a question, Simon?
What surprised you most from your research?
That's a good
That's a
question.
hard one. Yeah.
The hard ones are the
'Cause that-
best.
Because I've done that 350 episodes of my paranormal afterlife, as well as reading so many books and having my own experiences. And it's just over time you learn stuff, and then you might hear something and think, no, that's just too crazy for me. Then you hear it from somebody else, and then somebody else, and it gets a thing where you don't think it's crazy because there's too many people saying it. And it could be just talking about stuff that happens in physical mediumship. That surprised me. It's hard to say, I suppose. After decades of reading books about this stuff, you can say nothing surprises me. And when I've had my own experiences as well. So let's hope a surprise does come. That'd be quite pleasant.
So, in your experience, I know for myself when I would hear about mediums and they channel the dead and all this stuff, especially earlier on in my life, I was skeptical. My mind wasn't closed to it, but I thought overall these people were they believed what they were doing, but maybe they didn't necessarily were connecting with actual spirits that have long passed. And that isn't until, as you said, that you'd have another person say the same thing and they didn't know each other clearly or did not share the same data, and you started seeing a pattern. That changes how you feel about it, and you start paying more attention to them. I don't know about you, but I'm at a point now when I hear some of these recordings from the 50s and 60s with these mediums. I don't know if you listened to the one where it was a woman medium, I forget her name, and she channeled this guy who was on the HMS Hood. Did you hear that story?
Is that the one where it sank?
It sank and he drowned, and then he was walking down
Yeah.
a street in a neighborhood. And so then I listened to more, and I listened to another medium, and years later or years before, and you'd hear the person who passed away describe the very same things. But it was very particular. It wasn't like somebody was making it up. It was a pattern. You could see it.
Yeah, there was one medium who had a sailor come through. This is during the Second World War. And the sailor was not connected with anybody that was in the seance, but was saying, I was on this ship and we've been sunk by the German U-boats.
It sure
and
was.
we're in the North Atlantic. And so she found out and contacted the mother, and the authorities found out about it. They knew the ship had sank, but they considered it classified information, and they hadn't released the information to the public. So they're thinking, how does she know this? She must be a German spy. She was arrested and tried. And this is in England, and they couldn't find any evidence at all she was a German spy, but they were worried about her. And in the end, they tried her under like the 1683 Witchcraft Act, and she got sentenced to 2 years in prison.
We had a psychic medium knew there were a body. This was locally in our town a few years ago, 10, 15 years ago, maybe more. Was very good at what she did, and they were looking for someone, a body. She knew where it was, and they arrested her too and charged her with murder because they just couldn't believe that oh yeah, you're a psychic and you just happen to know where the body was. But they had to let her go because they found out that they couldn't tie her to the murder at all. She actually did know that body was there. And I wonder how often this happens and we never hear about it.
Yeah, I've talked to mediums who say that the police work with these people sometimes, but they don't ever actually put it in evidence or tell anybody
No.
they're working with people. But,
yeah, I was telling the people here, if you have special abilities, if you're telepathic, if you're a medium or you're psychic, that you can really locate things, and you don't want to broadcast it because it can be dangerous, because we're not, we may be in the 21st century, but we're still back in the 1700s in many ways, 1600s. We really are. We're the same people. We haven't changed. And the amount of fear that comes if you read somebody's mind is terrible. You become quite a threat to them. What do you think about ectoplasma, Simon? I laugh because I
Yeah,
worked in Ghostbusters.
that. Well, I think Dan Aykroyd got the idea from ectoplasm because
Sure,
he's so
absolutely.
knowledgeable on that stuff.
Well,
But
he's into this.
yeah, and I interviewed Leslie Kane a couple of times. She's the New York Times journalist, and she's written a book called Surviving Death, where she writes about all
Oh,
these
yes,
things.
I've heard. Yes.
And there's a seance she talks about that she went to with a physical medium called Stuart Alexander. And I've also interviewed him. But in part of the seance, there's this small table with a glass top, and underneath is a red light. And that's the only light in the room. And she was sitting opposite Stuart Alexander. And on either side of him, there were people holding his wrists, as well as his wrists being held to the chair by cable ties. And this is where the ectoplasm came from him. And she saw it coming from his mouth and moving down his body, slowly going down to under the table. And then it came back over the table, and the ectoplasm was a kind of mist, and it came together and formed a human hand. And it looked just like a human hand, except it was white. And then there was a voice in the room that said something like, "Well, aren't you going to shake my hand?" And she held that hand and kind of shook it, and she could feel the flesh and the bones. She said it felt very cold and wet, and she let go of it, and then the ectoplasm just dissipated back into a mist. And it sounds so far-fetched. It sounds like magic in real life, but it's Leslie Kane is talking about it, and she's got a lot of
Right.
respect, and she's a New York Times journalist.
Yeah.
And
Why would
she's
she make
saying,
that up?
and that was the last chapter in her book. And she said she left it till the last chapter because you couldn't have it at the beginning because it was so out there. And the talk about physical mediums doing a thing called transfiguration, where the ectoplasm comes up over their face and it
Yes.
forms the face of a dead person, one of the deceased loved ones, and you can communicate with them. So that's what I know of ectoplasm. It's more like a mist or something, not like the stuff you see in Ghostbusters.
No. I'm not sure 100%, but when Ghostbusters, we call it slime, and we had a name for it because I worked in the creature effects department, and we worked with methylcellulose before, and we called it green slime. And I was on the set, and I got hit with a bunch of it, and I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I've been slimed," and I don't know if they picked that up from me or if somewhere in there I picked it up from them, but I can't be sure. But I seem to recall I was the first one to say that, and I said it on the set, and it made it into the film. But that wasn't ectoplasm; that was slime. But I think they were kind of hinting at that. But no, it was just methylcellulate, which is used as a filler for toothpaste. Oddly enough, nasty
Wasn't the
stuff.
car called Ecto One?
Yeah, Ecto 1, Ecto 2. Yeah. So I was sitting here as I'm talking to you, and of course we can double check this later, although this is a pretty long, I've been on an hour and a half now, just about. I saw a shadow go behind me. I really did. I saw it. I don't know if anybody else saw it. My door is closed here. Mary will open it sometimes to hand me a note and say, my laser cutter is on, which you can turn off if you can find the switch. You unplugged it. Okay, it was done cutting. But if I look around, Nova's not in here, our dog. And she wouldn't have caused the shadow anyway. Maybe it was somebody was walking outside because it's still daylight here. But I'm not sure. It was creepy. As we're talking about this, I see this shadow up over on the wall over there with that battle on the other side of the Enterprise, and it didn't go over the Enterprise. It went. It was just on the wall. So see, you're
You
right.
reminded me of a. Sorry, I'm
No, go
interrupting.
ahead.
I had this weird experience one night. I wasn't at home. I was staying away, and I was sleeping by myself in this room. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and there were two kind of alien faces on the wall, like they were kind of projected there in some way. And I remember waking up and seeing them and squinting at them and thinking like this, holy moly. And it really woke me up. I had the adrenaline and I switched on the bedside light. And then there was too much light in the room and I didn't see them. So I switched the light off and they were still there. And then they moved to the side. And when they got to the corner of the room, they just kind of went into it and off. And they were that shape of Grey's face with the big black almond eyes. And maybe
Wow.
each one was a foot tall. And it just seemed so bizarre. And I was so awake. I wasn't dreaming it. But why would that happen? And if it was the Greys doing that, what a weird thing to do. What are they trying to say to me?
Well, they do a lot of weird things, you know. Yeah. Who was it? It was something we were watching on YouTube, and this gentleman was talking about his interaction with the Greys, and he says they know our culture very well, and I've even seen them give me the bird. They know that, you know, the middle finger, you know. And I can hear people now saying, "Oh, come on, really?" It's like, okay, look, if you've been involved in these phenomenons or this phenomenon, because it's really all one phenomenon, in my opinion, there's nothing that you could call too weird or strange or unacceptable. It's so crazy at times. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Whitley and I have good laughs about this all the time. But it happens. I mean, there's just things that happens. They're just so weird that it's so far outside of what we know in this life. So I'm not surprised at all, you know,
Yeah.
by it. I'm really not. They are beings that are in physical form, but they know that's not who they're really all about. And because of that, they're able to move through walls and float and do all these things. And according to them, we should be able to do the same things, but we're not. I think if we could, it would be really the planet would really be messed up, because good God, I can't imagine, you know, because I don't think that humanity's really kind of fully ready for that. I think some people are,
Yeah.
though.
I suppose if we were all completely open, like telepathically,
Yeah.
and we all knew exactly each other's thoughts and motives and emotions, that would change the whole way the planet worked.
Yeah. Well, imagine that there are on other worlds that exists very much so that they do all know what each other's thinking. That doesn't mean they're not individuals. And I've heard a lot of people, it's right around. I just saw Graham Chapman. Sorry. We're all individuals. I'm not. But there's a lot of people say, I reject this because I will not be part of a hive mentality. Well, it's really not a hive mentality. It's a collective. It's a shared database. And individually, we can move through our reality and experience things and contribute to it. The hive mentality I see more as Gene Roddenberry's Borg. You know, we really have where you have no choice at all. You're just part of that hive, and you do what the queen tells you to do, and that's that. I don't think that this is the same. So, shared soul, life force. You ever see that movie, Life Force? A friend of mine directed that movie.
No, I don't think I have.
It's a weirdie. It is. But I want to get off subject. So,
Well, there's a few times, like in the book, where like Deborah King talks about this web of souls that are connected, and there's a couple of other people who talk about this connection where they see this mass of light, and as they get closer, they realize it's made up of all these individual souls,
that's
and
correct.
how they're all one, but at the same time, they're all completely individual,
That's
and they
correct.
contribute to each other.
That's
And
correct.
this person said they could focus on one of them and get a connection with them, and they knew them absolutely, and that soul knew them absolutely. And it was this tremendous, I don't know, like a computer database where everything's connected and you can get any information you want out of it.
I told you about the symbols and the things I see in the morning when I'm fully awake. I close my eyes and I see them. Open my eyes, is that really there? Wow, I'm really seeing that. It's incredible. And so on one of those mornings, I got up very quickly and just using some charcoals, pastels on some black paper, I sketched, and I didn't really quite capture it. I'd have to do it again and to really dial it in, but I wanted to get down what I saw. Um, and you were just talking about that, and of course Deborah talked about that, and that's what I saw. I saw this web, and from behind it, it was glowing. It was beautiful. There were all these stars behind it, and there were all these little faces, gleaming eyes looking at me. And this was what, a couple months ago, Mary? Now? Yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to what I've seen. Except
Yeah.
I see that web like that, but I see things in front of it moving across kind of geometric shapes, not the faces like that.
Right. Well, that's what amazed me, because they weren't they were alive. They were moving. I could see the heads moving. I could see them looking like this, and the eyes were gleaming, and there was no reflection of the web on their eyes, which I found interesting. But that's how good of a look that it got. I mean, my eyes were closed and I could just see it.
It reminds me of what I just said about those symbols or those things on the wall. It's almost like it's bizarre what they're doing if they're giving that to you. And also why would they be giving that to you? Is it just to say, hey, we're still here or something?
Yeah. Well, I remember very early on being in my crib and seeing one of them looking at me through the bars of the crib. I mean, I'm really starting to think they're just observing, and they really aren't behind it. I think we've been behind it since we agreed to do it, but because they're so plugged into that database, that collective of information, and they're curious, and there's somewhere in the evolutionary uh, uh, path of things, somewhere between us and being non-physical completely, that they still have that curiosity that draws them to us, especially when we remember and we have a memory of it. I mean, I remember being a little kid and knowing that I was from the stars somehow. You've heard this before, that I was different. And maybe you're not supposed to remember that, but some of us do, no matter what. And maybe that's what causes an attraction to different spirits, not just the grays, to you. Because I know when I go into buildings that I'm not prepared for, that are indeed haunted, and the spirit in that building starts to talk to me. The first time that ever happened to me, it floored me.
Does it scare you?
What's that?
Does it scare you?
Did it scare me?
Yeah.
No, it was unsettling, because in this one time, there was a young girl, and she knew I could sense her, knew I could hear her, and she was desperate to understand what was happening to her. And it was in an old house that had been turned into a store. And I went in there, I started feeling ill, and the place was out of balance, like it was tilted. And I've since come to know this feeling, and Mary knows it very well herself. And then I heard her in my head. I mean, she was like right in the middle of my head. And when I think about it, even now, it makes me feel emotional. I could not do anything for her. And plus, I was in the presence of people who wouldn't understand if I started doing anything, reacting, crying, trying to talk back. I just had to get out of there. And I felt bad abandoning her. That's what I felt.
I've heard of cases like this where there are spirits in a building and they don't realize they're dead.
No.
And they may have died 100 years ago, but for them, they haven't been there 100 years. The time passes differently for them.
Well, yeah. Well, there really isn't a sense of time. And that's what these children and the telepathy tapes talk about, and the people in your book talk about, is that when they are disembodied and they are in pure spirit consciousness, time just doesn't exist anymore. It isn't a thing. It's only here. And then you have people, when they have experiences as I have with the visitors, being on an astronomy trip and seeing this big sphere right next to us, and you could hear a pin drop. It's like time stopped. I'm starting to think it did. Because you hear it over and over again. It was dead silent. You couldn't even hear a cricket. There was no wind. It was just, you doubted what was happening to you because you've never heard it ever be that silent in your whole life. There's always a sound.
I wonder if it's maybe part of their technology that they have some kind of field around them that's outside of time or something.
Or maybe they pull you into their realm of being just enough that you're just outside your time, but you can still see that reality. The two telescopes and my friend standing there frozen looking at this big sphere, and my running over to it because it's just that kind of person. It's like, I'm afraid, I guess, or a little scared, but I'm so curious, I'm like, I may not get this opportunity again. The darn thing backed away from me. It was really something.
Yeah, I talked to somebody, had an experience when they were a child and they're in a garden with a load of other children and a UFO came over. And it was like they were the only one that could move. The others were like statues. And then after the UFO had gone, the girl said to him, "Where were you? You disappeared."
Wow. That is what's the word I'm looking for? It was used in Star Trek a lot, and it was very temporal. It's like what I described. You're just a millisecond outside of the now, but you still can see this reality. But to the person who's not having the experience, you disappear. The funny thing about, too, when this happens is a lot of people will not remember seeing the UFO. They will be with you at the time they're seeing it, but not remember anything about it. Minutes, hours, weeks, days later. This has happened to me.
Yeah, I've also heard people say that the group of people see the UFO and they all agree at the time they've seen it, and then they may meet up the next day and nobody mentions it.
Yeah.
And nobody ever talks about it again.
So what are you going to be working on next? I mean, you've worked obviously a very, very long time on this book, and you put a lot of your research and your energy and your time into it. And you're very knowledgeable about the subject, and you've really this is the book for you. And what do you see for yourself in the future, besides you have your podcast, which I told everyone about, and I said they should check it out. So what's next for you?
Well, in this book, there's 2 or 3 people who have their experience while they're in a coma. And I've talked to somebody who wrote a book about comas and near-death experience. And he said that he came across a small number of people who said that they lived another life during their coma. And I'm trying to find people who've had that experience. And because that's what I think I might write about next. I just got to find enough people. But they say the life that they lived while they're in their coma was just as real as this one. It wasn't dreamlike. There was no kind of jumps in time and locations. They had a job, they had an apartment, they got married, they had children. This one guy was in a coma for 7 days, and he said he lived a life for 22 years on another Earth, and that he was in a war in a country in Southeast Asia. He did a year's tour of duty, and on this Earth, that country doesn't exist. And he talked to a woman who had a child on this other Earth, and the child grew up to be maybe 4 years old, and then she wakes up in this hospital ward, and she's coming out of her coma, and she didn't know if this was real or that was real, and she was really upset, grieving the loss of this child. And the doctors are just saying, "Oh, you were just hallucinating. Don't take it that
Yeah,
seriously." But for
they're so
her,
knowledgeable on the subject, aren't they?
but then there was another guy. He said it was like he was in the near future, and he was working at a company where he was a salesman, and they had a virtual reality device that you put on your head, and then you would totally be immersed in something, and you would be actually experiencing it. And the company would sell you other people's lives. And he didn't use these names, but he was almost like he was saying, you could be Brad Pitt for a few days if you wanted, or Taylor Swift. You just pay the money, you put this device on your head. And there was another guy who said he was on a 17th century sailing ship in the ice, and the ice wasn't breaking up, and they were running out of food, and a couple of the sailors died, and they had to eat the sailors that had died because they'd run out of food. And they say, like I said, it's just as real as this life. There's no difference. It's like they're transported to another universe or another reality or something. And I really find that fascinating. And I'd like to find a lot of people and get all these experiences into a book and analyze what's going on there.
That's a great idea. That really is. That's fantastic. I would love to see that. They're talking about a Star Trek episode that was on Next Generation called Inner Light. And that's the one where Picard, they encounter a probe, and the probe sends some sort of wave at him, and he passes out on the floor. Kim, thank you. Thank you very much. And during the time that he's unconscious, he lives a whole other life in another world, has kids, the whole thing. And that really struck me when I saw it. And then, to make a long story short, we had a party here at the studio, and there were a lot of Star Trek people that worked on Star Trek who came here. And one of the people brought the writer of that episode. And I said, I got to ask you a question. Where did you get the idea from that? He says, well, it's just an idea I had. I said, so you didn't ever have a dream where you lived an entire lifetime in that dream or anything like that? He says, no, never. He says, why? And I said, it happened to me when I was in high school. I dreamed one night an entire life and woke up with this terrible loss, of the family and the people and the life I had and everything. And I remember going to school, and I remember crying, and it was just incredibly moving. So what you're talking about is not something strange to me at all. And I think it really makes sense. I really
There is
do.
talk of a multiverse or something in quantum physics, isn't there?
Yeah.
A number of other dimensions, or whatever you would call it.
Well, if you're following what they're discovering with Webb, it's not far fetched anymore.
'Cause I did
I mean,
talk to an experiencer. Sorry, I keep interrupting. I'm sorry about that.
no, I keep interrupting. I'm sorry for that myself. So I
But there
think we
was,
get excited.
yeah. There was a guy I talked to who was having experiences, ET encounters, and he found himself in an apartment one night, and he kind of recognized it. It seemed familiar, and he kept on catching a glimpse of someone, and then he'd look round and they weren't there, and he felt like that was a grey. But on the shelf in this apartment with loads of photographs that he was in, but he didn't know any of the people that were in the photographs. But they were all big smiles and hugging each other and all this kind of thing. And so it sounded like he was living another life and he had this other apartment somewhere.
That was somebody walking by that time.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's a lot of units in this complex, and so it's Friday, and people are still actually working at this point. Yeah. Well, and then there's the Mandela effect, and I know that that's real because I absolutely remember the things they say that never happened in my childhood growing up, labels on things and people that are in movies that supposedly never were in them, and I just realized I'm wearing my laser cutter glasses still. I know that that's a real thing. In fact, there are people who, well, like in the case of Fruit of the Loom, they never had the horn with the fruit coming out of it. They insisted that they never had that. Yet there are people who have found the underwear with that on it. That's just one case. There's lots of them of all different things. So you question what's going on there.
Yeah, it's almost like a time slip or something, or I suppose you call it dimension slip. I had a weird experience myself, which was in a way is quite mundane, but I used to drive to work every morning and on the way back, the same route every time. And one morning I noticed that my favorite Chinese restaurant had had a fire and the whole front of the restaurant was boarded up and you could see where the black soot was above the windows. And I remember thinking, oh man, that's my favorite Chinese place. And I went past it a few days, and then one day I went past it and it was back to normal, exactly as it had been before. I was driving into work and I thought, oh, that's great. I can go there at the weekend. But then I was heading home and it was boarded up like it had the fire. And I'm sure I saw that because I remember thinking, wow, they did a quick job on fixing that place up.
Right.
And I don't know what happened there. That was a weird
But
experience.
that's not mundane. I mean, you know what you saw. You're of sound mind. You saw that. You didn't hallucinate it. You didn't have nod out at the car and dream it for a second. You saw it. And then it was changed again. And I think a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not, have had experiences like this, and they just simply it didn't fit, so it got pushed aside and into the I don't want to think about that box. Because
Yes.
if you're in a conversation or in a party or in a social setting and you talk about this stuff, people will always kind of like, can I tell you something? I've never told this to anyone
Yeah.
before. You're probably not going to believe me. They always say that. You're talking to me here. And yet still, you're probably not going to believe me. And I'm sure you get that. Being who
Yeah.
you are and what you're doing and what your work is,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I never talk about my podcasts with anyone or really writing this book. I talk about it a little bit and I see they have this funny look on their face and I feel like, oh, all right, I'll just stop talking about it.
Yeah, I get, I have a lot of people that follow my work and because of what I've done in Hollywood. But when I bring this subject up, well, I'm just gonna go off and talk to you later. And yeah, they turn green, It's like, oh God, he's not gonna talk about that stuff again. We love you dearly, but don't talk about that stuff, We don't want to think of you as being weird.
Yeah.
I don't know
You're
when that.
okay when you don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They quickly, under the rug, and now let's talk about model airplanes or whatever it is they like to talk to me about, or what was it like to be in Ghostbusters and that kind of thing. And but I think down deep inside, they know that the universe is much odder than they ever realized, um, and they just simply don't want to go there. And we talked about that earlier. But you're writing a book like this one is a huge help with as we call it, breaking the silence, breaking the stigma. That could have been another name for the show. It's a huge help.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm just making my own little contribution to the literature that's out there and all this stuff.
Yeah. I really like the way you put that book together. It's just amazing. And I really look forward to your next idea, because it's going to take some research. You're going to have to find people, but it's my gut feeling is that you will find these people and you will find these stories, and you'll be able to verify them as well, because all these subjects are connected. It's all about
Yeah.
consciousness, and if it's like, what came first, the chicken, the egg? It didn't. Consciousness did. Then the chicken and the egg came. So because it certainly would seem that our consciousness affects reality, molds it, shapes it, creates things that never existed before we thought of them, over and over and over and over and over again. Which begs the question, who thought of the universe? Maybe we all did. I don't know.
Yeah. As I say, that we were all part of that creator. You start using words like creator, and it almost has religious baggage with it. Or
Yeah, I don't like
call
to
it
go
soul
there.
or something. But
Do
that's-
you? I mean, the religious thing, it's one thing to acknowledge being spiritual, or being a spirit, or you having a conscious spiritual being, but I don't know. Religion is organized, and it's done a lot of harm in a lot of cases. It's held back people like yourself and me from being accepted. So it's a hard one. But yeah, I mean, when you really look at the universe and you take it apart, you really look at the DNA, it looks designed to me. That doesn't mean it is. I'm just saying it looks that way. Somebody thought of it, and it may have just been all of us collectively at far back in the time that we don't even remember now, that we wanted something to do. So we created a universe, and then had the silly idea of allowing ourselves to become physical within what we created, and then forget about where we came from, so we could experience the e-ticket ride at Disneyland, which this might very well be.
yeah, but it's a hell of a ride, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I know. We have the yin and the yang, and that's how it works. I suppose it'd be pretty boring if everything was perfect and nothing ever died, and there was no impermanence and nothing to discover, nothing to explore. Because we're all explorers here. We're exploring reality, we're exploring consciousness, and it's exciting, and I look forward to it every day, and it makes for an exciting existence, good and the bad.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of an episode of Star Trek, Voyager, when Q showed up, one of the Q, and said they knew everything and they didn't want to exist anymore.
That's
Because
right.
they'd experienced everything.
That's right.
So maybe that's why we come here.
Yeah. The other thing too, I think going back to Roddenberry and Star Trek, because I was so fortunate to know Gene and work on the shows and everything. And when The Next Generation ended, the last thing that Q said to Picard was, he said, Picard, you know, charting new worlds and finding new galaxies and new universes and stuff is not what it's all about. It's about existence. And that was the last thing we ever saw of him till Picard.
Yeah.
After 7 years of that show, the omnipotent being, all powerful, all seeing, all knowing, Q told Picard that the real adventure, the real exploration was existence. And I know what Gene meant by that. It's what we've been talking about for the last hour. So
I had some.
Q would be proud of us.
I had somebody told me that this is one of the guests on my podcast, that Gene Roddenberry was involved in some kind of like a UFO group or something before Star Trek, and that's where he got the idea from like a galactic federation, was because it was something to do with a group of people that were into UFOs.
I heard that when I was with him, we never talked about UFOs, and we just talked about the work, and he liked my work, and we talked about the show, and that was about it. I'm wish I would have had the opportunity to ask him what he thought about all that, but I've heard that from other people too. I remember dimly. I remember something about him, the apartment he was in, the people lived next door. There was something strange going on with them, and he could hear through the wall that they weren't people or something like that, that they were aliens or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think other people have heard that too, but we'll never know because we can't talk to Gene right now. So, but obviously how he felt about all this came out in his imagination, and imagination is what comes first before anything exists in reality. So I think Star Trek, if we take care of ourselves and we take care of our world, and we end what we're doing to each other right now, we could have a future like Star Trek. And that would be wonderful to explore and meet other civilizations and exchange, and do that in the physical with spacecraft and live aboard them. It would be a wonderful thing to experience. We don't need to do that, but it's there. And if we just stop fighting among ourselves and change our priorities, we could be doing that.
What's your view on people that say there are the Pleiadians and Arcturians? I talked to somebody the other day, recorded an episode, and they were having encounters with greys, but then they said these other aliens turned up that looked human, except their skin was very dark blue, and they were kind of the Pleiadians, and that there was some kind of galactic federation that they were a part of. And there were some of these greys that were outside of that were really quite negative. But the only other time I've really heard of blue-skinned ETs was from Whitley Strieber, where he talked about the cobalt blue small guys. But
One
they
day,
sound
lady,
very different.
They told that woman, one day, lady, you'll look just like us. I keep my mind open. At one time, I might have found that a stretch, but I really don't know. And I haven't encountered Arcturians or Pleiadians that I know of. Although in my experience, I have seen very human-looking people that don't look quite like us. I mean, they do, but they don't. They could pass in public. And yes, some of them were very fair-haired and very, very beautiful looking. And so I question who those people were, but they were with the Greys too. But of course, if you think of Travis Walton, when he was on board the craft, he saw the Greys without the eye covers on, and then he saw blonde, tall people, beautiful looking humans. I just keep an open mind, and I don't cherry pick, and I listen to everyone. And I think you know deep inside, for obvious reasons that we discussed for the last hour, if someone's on the level or not. It's not that you just see it in their eyes or hear it in their voice or in their body posture. It's a connection, and you just know they're telling you that they've experienced something. It might have been a blue alien. You know that they really did experience that. You know, instinctively. We need to be able to allow ourselves to do that if we're ever going to progress. So you might miss something. It's like Gary Nolan. He says, you take something off the table, that's gone. That's it. You can't go back to it. So don't take it off the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder how much of it's got to do with our perception and what our consciousness does with things. I did talk to somebody else on my podcast. I keep coming saying that. They said that they saw these greys, and the greys kind of said to them, this is not what we look like where we come from. We're not physical. What you see of us here is what you impose on us when we get here. And so it was suggesting his consciousness created their form.
Yeah, it's a double slit experiment. Simon, I want to thank you for being here. I'm sorry we had that little screw up, but it's I understand exactly what happened. We have daylight savings time. You don't. I wish we didn't, but we do. Oh.
Yeah. And you guys have just changed in the last week or so, haven't you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do change this weekend.
Oh, you
At
do?
the moment, we're on GMT, and then we go an hour forward to British summertime.
Oh. Wow. Well, that's okay, because it worked out. And I really enjoyed our conversation, as always. This is the third time you've been on our show, and there will be a fourth and a fifth and a sixth, I'm sure, because I think everyone here really enjoyed the conversation and being able to share in all this. And thank you so much for writing that book. It's incredible. I will go on Amazon and order an actual copy, because you sent me the PDF, which I appreciate. So, and I would encourage
about the book.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone here to get his book. Just go on Amazon, order it. It'll show up in the mail. You look forward to seeing it, and just sit down and have a good read, because you're really going to enjoy this book and you'll learn a lot from it. Simon, thanks so much for being on the show. It's so greatly appreciated.
I'm sorry I was late, but yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And I hope you'll come back to my podcast.
Anytime. You just name it. Anytime. All right. I'm going to sign off, and thank you everyone tonight for your support and your love and for being here. And we'll see you again very soon.